Hey guys, what's up and welcome to another episode of the TheGoodCastShow. Now, ever since I've shared my interviews with members from the women's aid organization WAO, I've been receiving comments and private messages to also talk about the challenges and issues that men are facing. While feminists and women activists have done a great job at championing issues that empower women and being very loud about it, us men, however, have taken the suffer in silence approach, a method that has not brought much good to us when we look at certain stats out there. In fact, the increasing suicide rate in our country in recent years was driven mainly by the rise of suicide among males. In 2024, suicide among men in Malaysia was described as roughly 4 times higher than among women. So somebody needs to sound the alarm bells because something has gone wrong if such stats exist till today. I'm joined by MALCOLM FERNANDEZ, who's an advocate and solicitor, the managing partner of MALCOLM FERNANDEZ Advocates and Solicitors, and also the co-founder of the Fathers Rights Association of Malaysia, FRAM. Today's discussion will revolve around fatherhood, men in marriage, divorce, custody, and a host of other topics solely from the perspective of men. So thank you so much, Malcolm, for being on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
No worries, man. And by the way, how I found you was interesting was because of the comments you were making on these videos. Very anti-feminist comments. So I'm sure I'm sure today's interview is going to get some people riled up and wanting to comment back as well. We can't wait for that. Now, we'll start this discussion with fatherhood. So let's begin with Father's Day. In fact, this was an idea that you gave me yesterday. Thank you for the idea, by the way.
Sure.
So in 2025, in the US, Mother's Day was celebrated around 83 to 84% of the adult population, while Father's Day was celebrated by only 70% of the adult population. Now, the global YouGov data from 17 markets suggests that celebration of Father's Day is noticeably lower than the figure for Mother's Day celebrations in Southeast Asia. In fact, marketing analysis for Asia Pacific notes that Mother's Day is a major seasonal campaign anchor, while Father's Day advertising in Asia tends to be done in a smaller scale. Now, regional marketing studies from APAC, particularly, for example, like Shopee Taiwan, have reported that Father's Day sales is only around 60% of the size of the Mother's Day sales on the same platform. So obviously we can see, while the numbers are not that different, not so different, the gulf is not that big. However, there is a difference in approach when it comes to Father's Day and Mother's Day. So I ask you, Malcolm, despite us being the generation that's screaming for equality, why are fathers given less attention than mothers? Doesn't sound very equal to me.
Well, that may have been the view that Father's Day is always, you always see less celebration. All right. In fact, one of when we had a conversation, I just told you this, that you see a lot of memes and a lot of posters. Happy Father's Day to all the mothers that created fathers.
Yeah, and before you go there, because that was actually going to be my second question,
Sure.
but I'll just give people a bit of background on that. So what Malcolm just referred to was a social media trend that emerged several years ago. It was wishing single mothers happy Father's Day. So just to give you a bit of numbers behind it as well, an article published by Business Insider in 2018 dedicated Father's Day to nearly 10 million single mothers in the US. 2015, a brand Angel Soft ran video ad campaigns that explicitly wished single moms a happy Father's Day. So that's what he's talking about. But please go on, Malcolm.
So we see that. And of course, a lot of fathers get upset.
Of course.
And they say, listen, this is our day. Why is it being hijacked? Why is it being belittled? And I can understand how they feel. But sometimes what happens is we need to see the humor in it. And we start looking at culture and the way they behave and start nitpicking and saying that everything is toxic. Then the entire notion of society and how they function in culture will just fall apart because we don't live life. But I see a trend, and this is a very positive trend, and this is seen with the Ministry of Women, where today there is a push to not empower fathers, but to celebrate fatherhood. And I think that is something that has been in the pipeline for a long time, and I think the Minister, Dato' Nancy Shukri, and even the Deputy Minister, Dato' Sri Dr. Noraini, has been on the forefront. They're not saying that fathers are more important than mothers. They are saying that I think it's time that we look at fathers. And I think it's time that we sort of celebrate fathers too.
That's a fair point, Malcolm. But just back again to that meme that you're talking about,
Sure.
of wishing single mothers happy Father's Day. I do agree with you that there may be a bit of humor in it, and that's
Sure.
fine. I'm all for humor. But what it implies is that the role of a father can be done by a mother. Right, that's what it's sort of subtly implying. That's why you're saying that a single mother is both a father and a mother. And secondly, it almost undermines or even belittles fatherhood. Now, I ask you this: what would the reaction have been if men had organized a campaign to wish Happy Mother's Day to single fathers?
Well, I think there will be a huge uproar.
Exactly. So
It'll be a huge uproar in the sense that how could you? How can you degrade mothers? And I think that's not the point that we need to stress. I think the point is that each individual, whether you are a single mother, and I think single mothers out there are many, and I think they do a remarkable job.
of course.
And I think we need to empower them. I think we need to celebrate. I think we need to really look at what single mothers go through and give them all the support that they need. But at the same time, we should start to respect. And I think when you have a particular specific celebration, which is directed to a mother or a father, I think that should be celebrated simply because of that. Happy Father's Day, Happy Mother's Day. Well, these are days in a year which is specifically addressed to that particular individual.
To make them feel special,
To make
right?
them-
For their contribution.
To celebrate them, actually.
Yeah.
You know, to celebrate the entire notion of motherhood, to celebrate the entire notion of fatherhood. And I think while Father's Day is not so commercialized, but more should be done to look at how we could maybe put on more things out there in social media and awareness about the fact that it's time that you actually celebrate fatherhood.
But as a father yourself, don't
Yes.
you think that this whole push for equality is rather hypocritical when you compare it to what we were just discussing? That, like exactly what you said, if the roles were reversed, if the situation was reversed, and it was men, we are wishing Happy Mother's Day to single fathers, there'll be an uproar. But when it's us men, we have to take it with humor, with a pinch of salt. We have to sort of just accept it as the way it is. That's not equal to me.
Well, firstly, I would like to maybe correct what you just said earlier, that my comments in your podcast were seen as anti-feminist.
Yeah.
I think
No, he's not. I'm just
Yes.
kidding. Yeah.
I think I support feminism. I think that is the most remarkable push. We need to learn to respect people. But when you talk about if roles were reversed and how would it end up, yes, it would. I think in a push for equality, I wouldn't say that it's hypocritical. I think what's happening is that we are looking at little pigeonholes. We are looking at certain categories that we want, but certain categories we justify it being remained. Now, why do I say that? I'll give you an example. We want equality. If we want equality and we want a society that's gender-free, then we should start looking at legislations
Correct.
to ensure that all legislations remain gender blind. So we look at the Law Reform Act, and that is the go-to act for divorce and for child custody issues. Section 88 sub 3 talks about issues relating to child custody. And Section 88 sub 3 says for a child below 7, there is a rebuttable presumption that children below 7 should primarily be with the mother. Now, if you look at it with a clear sense, that is essentially saying that you are placing one gender as superior. But that cannot play a role when you are asking for a gender-free equality sort of notion. That must be looked at. So a pure gender-free society, I think in Malaysia we have that. But there are certain social constructs which still have notions of advocating for one particular gender.
I'll get to that because I think I want to touch on the custody thing specifically in a while. But before we do that, among the points raised by several of the feminists in my recent interviews was that gender roles in the household should change. In fact, they are pushing for more shared responsibility, which I can see the sense in. But what is your view of the gender roles in a household? Are you more traditional in your outlook, or do you believe in a more hybrid model to suit the modern times?
I think it is not just me, and I speak for most fathers, if not all fathers. And every father I spoke to performs roles done traditionally by the female, by mothers, by wives. We now see fathers cooking. We see fathers being more proactive.
Yeah, changing diapers and all.
Nurturing their child or children. They are more involved in education. They want to do school runs. They want to bathe the child. They want to cook. They want to put the child to sleep. They want to read bedtime stories. Now, they also wash dishes. I've spoken to fathers who said, you know what, I used to do this. I for one, can cook. I, for one, can not just cook your normal meals. I can even bake you a bread or muffin. I don't see it as that's predominantly a women's role.
But do you think that the feminist argument that this is not happening, that the sole burden of the household chores is being placed on women, is still incoherent with what's happening now?
I respectfully disagree, and I think that is the traditional notion which do not apply in modern Malaysia. I think if we look, we will see that those roles are now becoming a bit faded. Now,
those gender boundaries.
Yes,
Yeah.
but am I saying that every male out there does household work? Every male out there cooks? I don't think so. And let's be very fair, all right? But the majority of them do.
Yeah.
And if you just have to walk out in the street, you would see fathers carrying their child. Traditionally, it was the mother who carries the child while the father walks right in front. You don't see that these days. You see fathers pushing the pram. You see child is crying and father's going to try to pacify the child and all that. So those gender roles which were traditionally attributed to one particular gender no longer applies in Malaysia.
Now, just for those of you all watching, again, in my previous interviews with WO, you have seen the feminists argue the opposite. But what Malcolm is saying is actually supported by study. So in 2013, a study called Parental Involvement in Child's Development, Father versus Mother, compared perceived father versus mother involvement among young adults and found that while mothers were more involved in mentoring or advising and emotional roles, there was no significant difference between fathers and mothers in instrumental involvement, which means tasks such as practical caregiving. A study on first-time fathers after the birth of their child, paternal involvement, published by IIUM, found that paternal involvement was moderate, with most fathers sharing caregiving tasks with their partners. Lead Woman, an NGO that focuses on women in leadership, on their website pointed out that there is a growing social commentary and scholarly support for more hands-on fathering in Malaysia, challenging traditional norms of father as breadwinners only. So it seems that fathers are doing as much as mothers today. So has feminism sort of lagged behind what's changing in society and still sticking to this age-old debates points?
I think, well, feminism, I don't intend to say that feminism is outdated. I think it's
Seems like it is.
Well, I think one needs to look at it with an evolving lens. Feminism is very important. In fact, the concept feminism was around. It was coined by Charles Fourier in the late 18th century, early 18th century. And then it came up with the concept of you judge society as to how women have progressed. And that concept is important today. It is still important. We want to see every gender achieving things on equal platforms. But if we say that, well, that narrative that you said, that feminist says that fathers are not doing much, That cannot be. That is an outdated research. In fact, what should be done is to promote, to create awareness, to ensure that fathers continue, if the role that they're playing is such, they continue to expand that role. Because a father's role is very important to the development of the child.
Yeah.
And I think scientific studies, social studies have shown fathers play a very important role in the form in which they nurture. Mothers are, the way they behave when it comes to the child, they're into nurturing. Fathers rough play. And if you look at rough play, it's important for a child's development.
Yeah, it's been proven scientifically to help brain development.
So what I'm saying is not based on emotion, that I'm advocating for fathers and I'm saying that all mothers are bad. I think females are bad. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we need to stop. We need to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is the children, the child. And we need to make sure that that narrative doesn't become toxic. Because once it becomes toxic and you keep saying that you downplay the roles of a father, fathers get upset. It's easy to say a father becoming disillusioned. Why do I need to do things? Because everything I do, I'm seen as an unimportant part of this family nucleus. And that cannot happen.
So is it fair to say then, but based on what you just said, that society in today differs in their treatment of a father's and a mother's emotion? In fact, they're more biased to the mothers and not caring much about a father's emotion, for a father's role in the family.
Yes, I think more should be done. And like I said earlier, the Ministry of Women is doing that now. They are coming up with programs. I was involved with a fatherhood module, and this was done with LPPKN. We sat over a period of 3 to 6 months, 3 sessions each, to come up with a module for fathers nationwide. It's known as Module Kebabaan. It's the first module which is specifically and directly made for fathers. And that module essentially relates to a lot of issues. It looks at emotional aspect, it looks at financial, it looks at how you look at your family nucleus, how you treat everything. It's a very comprehensive module for fathers. Now, at the same time, I think a lot of think tanks and universities are also looking at this concept of co-parenting. It's not an alien concept. It's a concept which has evolved even in Singapore. They've moved from the concept of sole custody to a concept of joint parenting. You see that in many states in the US. You see that in Nordic countries where they've moved to the concept of equal shared parenting, substantial access, and all these courts and all these jurisdictions have looked at it this way. They've realized that fathers play an important role, and fathers should not be treated as visitors to the child. A child is not an amusement park. You
Exactly.
go for 2 hours, have a look at the child, and come back. Nothing happens. You're not able to bond. And Nordic countries have seen this, and they've said, you know what? I think we should realize this, that fathers play a very important role. Scientific studies have shown that. So it is about giving fathers a substantial access. In reality, it's an access that is logical. It's a realistic access. Now, I'm not saying that fathers should now go out and say, you know what, there's 30 days in a month, I want 15 days. That's not how it works. It's about, are you able to spend time with your child? If you're only able to spend time from Thursday to Sunday, then ask for Thursday to Sunday. It's not a battle. It's not a battle, between male and female. It's not about taking power away. It's not about taking the child away. It's about the child. It's about how you bond with the child, how you create memories, how the child thrives in a very positive environment. And that is what is important. In Nordic countries, fathers have got paternity leaves, and they've got substantial paternity leaves, and they use it. And they use it not to stay at home and go for a movie. They use it to look after the kids.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think even in even in our law, it seems to emphasize these traditional gender roles, which doesn't suit the modern day, which I'll get to in a bit.
Sure.
So let's go to now men, particularly from the topic of divorce, since you are the co-founder of the Fathers Rights Association of Malaysia, FRAM. Now, in your experience as a lawyer and both a co-founder of this association, what are the more common reasons you get from men as to why they want to file for a divorce?
Well, the common factors that you see is involvement of in-laws, financial issues, emotional abuse, which they don't realize that they are victims, but they only realize once they get help. There are cases of physical abuse. There are cases of adultery. And I'm not saying that adultery here is committed by men. There are men who have extramarital affairs. But there are women who have that too. Recently, I had a case where this father came to me and he said his wife is having an affair, and he's got evidence of it, and he showed me the evidence, and I was shocked. She wasn't having an affair with a man. She was having an affair with a woman.
Wow.
Right? And this affair was caught on CCTV, and she was all out with a female companion on a sofa with the children climbing all over them. All right.
Oh my goodness.
So that's on CCTV, and he came to my office, and he's not eaten for 3 days, and that's why if you come to my office, there's a pantry. Now that pantry is stocked with food, drinks, everything, and a lot of times, fathers that come to my office have not eaten for days. They are in a situation whereby if they snap, they may just kill themselves.
Or they go kill their partner.
Yep. And when they come to us, one of the things that I do is to counsel them, to tell them that, there are solutions. If you're in a bad marriage, it's not working out and counseling is not helping, then look at the bigger picture. Killing yourself, attempting suicide is not the answer. It's maybe the easiest way to solve a problem, but it is not the only way. All right? And this father told me that he's not eaten. And I actually told him that if you want me to talk to you, then I want you to eat, or else I'm going to open the door and you're going to get out of my office. And my lawyers and I gave him food. We made sure he had a hot drink, calmed himself down, and asked him, tell us the problem. And he took out his handphone and showed us the CCTV recordings, and he was just crying. And he said, I didn't do anything. I'm not at fault. But my wife had taken away both my kids, who are below 7, and I'm not allowed to see them. What did I do wrong? Now, I'm giving you an extreme. But stories like this are stories that we hear almost every time. I'm not saying that every father out there is the epitome of an amazing father. I always tell this to people. In all my advocacy, in my submissions in court, I would always say this, and I'm being honest. There are bad fathers, and likewise, there are bad mothers.
Yeah, definitely.
There are amazing fathers out there who will do anything to give the best for the children, and likewise, there are amazing moms out there. I've been blessed because I've seen these amazing moms who look at the idea of divorce and say, you know what, my marriage with my husband has broken, it's gone, but I don't want my children to grow up not knowing their father. He can come, he can see, there's a court order, but I don't want to follow the court order. If the court order says Friday to Sunday and he wants to take the child from Monday to Sunday, good. Tell me and I will send. And I've seen those mothers. They refuse to take spousal maintenance. They want to be independent. All right? Now, but we see these narratives coming to us. And one of the variables, or one of the constant factors in all of this cases that I see and fathers that call me almost every 2 days or in a week I get calls because my handphone number is listed on the FRAM website.
Yeah. And on your TikTok as well.
And my TikTok.
Yeah.
Now, the TikTok channel that I have is not, or the FRAM Facebook, it is not meant to be anti-feminist. I think that's being disrespectful to women for what they advocate. But it's meant to tell fathers that it's not all gloom and doom. It's about, you need to up the game, you need to be seen, optics is very important, you need to be seen as a responsible father.
But before you go on, Malcolm, I think I would love to touch on the solution part of it. And I do agree with you that this FRAM is not an anti-feminist movement. It's just giving a voice to men, which I think is completely lacking. I mean, when you see that if there are studies pointing out that men are 4 times more likely to commit suicide than women, and mind you, during that time, the same period, the suicide rates among women have remained stable, whereas men have inclined by crazy amounts. There is something wrong. But an article about custody in Malaysia argues that fathers often face a steep disadvantage, especially when children are young, as you mentioned, below 7. There is a legal presumption favoring mothers. Now, this is dangerous because one report refers to fathers feeling like a silent crisis. They fear to experience loss of meaningful access and contact with their children. For some parents, particularly fathers, they risk this risk may serve as a motivation to avoid divorce, separation. So basically, in your experience, while the feminist argument is that for every 1 case of gender abuse, there's 9 that goes unreported. I mean, the similar can be argued for men who opt to stay in broken marriages in such depressive situations just because they don't want to lose their children.
I have a father who's...
No, but before that, isn't the law to be blamed?
We need to be careful here, all right? It is the structure, the legislative structure that is to be blamed. A lot of fathers get angry with the courts. And one of the things they say is, I don't want to go to court because, the courts are biased. The courts are not biased. No courts in Malaysia will remove you as a father.
Okay.
We need to understand that. Let's not blame the judges because I think we have had amazing judges. We have very specialized, dedicated family courts in Shah Alam High Court and KL High Court. And the judges there have always been amazingly fair. So why do fathers lose out? When a father goes into court, he's already lost. If the child is below 7, he's no longer fighting for custody because the bar, though it's a rebuttable presumption, is a very high bar. You need to show that the mother is unfit. And most of the time, fathers don't go to court with evidence because how often do you record? How often do you collect evidence? What happens is they go back home and the wife and child has disappeared.
Yeah.
What do they do? It's about trying to contact them, and that takes up time and months, and they've been alienated. Mother goes to court, child below 7, she gets custody.
Yeah.
And it's very easy. The ratio of fathers getting custody is so low that it's almost negligible. All right? Now, when a father goes to court, and this is where the fear arises, the dejection, the being disillusioned, because what they're looking at now is pittance of access. They're looking at supervised access. They're looking at 4 hours of access. They're looking at 8 hours of supervised access. No overnight stay.
It sounds like a broken system to me.
It is. And to blame, the blame should be to the legislation that's in place. It's an archaic legislation. It's not evolved. It's not taken the models in other jurisdictions and looked at it and said, you know what, that is working. What is the entire purpose of this legislative process that we have? What is the entire notion or rationale of these provisions? It is to say that, listen, marriage is broken. Well, let's divide everything so that both parties can move on and lead their lives. But when it comes to the children, the rationale is not to burden one with looking after the child. It is to ensure that both parties play a role. And that is why you have access. Access is not visiting a child for 4 hours. Access means the party that doesn't have custody is given sufficient access so that the party can bond. You don't see that very often because the law and the legislation here doesn't really spell it out.
Yeah, and before we go to the bond between the father and the child, let's focus on the father first. If you think that this has no consequence to the lives of men, this is pointed out as one of the reasons why male suicide is high is because of this. Yeah, the National Population and Family Development Board of Malaysia's sociological analysis noted that men experience greater psychological destabilization from marital failure, especially where child access becomes limited. I mean, there are so many evidence out there to prove. Why hasn't the law changed to suit what is needed now?
Well, the law hasn't changed or is taking time to change because of the narratives that are out there. When you start looking at concepts such as patriarchal society, you start looking at men generally being bad, men are pro-violent. Such narratives harm fathers. And that is why there are avenues to weaponize the legislative process. There are avenues and options for a disgruntled spouse or ex-wife to use these legislations simply to punish the father.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, what happens? A father has an affair. He could have been the best father to the child. But what happens is that the Law Reform Act is used, custody is taken, the father has to fight for access, and they say, well, he's having an affair, he's not a good father.
Exactly.
We need to now realize you can be a bad spouse,
but a damn good father.
But you can be a fine father.
Yeah.
And that goes across the board. The mother was having an affair with the same gender. She could be an amazing mother.
But doesn't seem so, based on the
story.
story.
It doesn't seem so. I'm just extending that. All right, it would have been better if she did it in private.
Yeah.
But this is what I'm saying. She could be a bad spouse, but that doesn't mean she's a bad mother. All right, but what's to be blamed for such very slow evolution of our legislative reforms? It is the narratives that are out there. We have not embraced the fact that fathers actually do a lot for their kids. Fathers want to be in their kids' life. Fathers are willing to pay. But what happens? We have issues like maintenance. Mothers would go to court and say, well, I want maintenance of 5,000 for a 6-year-old child. And that's because the father needs to pay for this enrichment class, and there'll be 1 million enrichment classes that the child has to be enrolled, and that is simply done to limit time of the father with the child. So what happens is this: when the father gets a child from Saturday to Sunday, which could be from 10 a.m. Saturday to 6 p.m. Sunday, what the father becomes is not a father. He becomes a driver. He is driving the child from one enrichment class to one tuition to karate to taekwondo to painting, violin. It doesn't help because the child becomes overwhelmed. The child becomes upset because whenever I see my father, I don't get to bond with my father. And we must see this. It doesn't just affect the father. It affects the child. And
because when he sees the father, it's associated with, now I'm on a schedule, I have to go for class and all that. It's not time for fun.
We need to realize and sit down and actually realize, listen, this is not doing any good to the child because the child is not able to do what the court wants the father and the child to do, which is to bond. You don't bond on the road while driving a child from point A to point B and point C. You bond when you're able to do things with the child. You're able to play with the child. You're able to sit down. You're able to eat with the child. You're able to cook with the child, put the child to bed. Those are things that creates this bond.
Not sending them to class.
It's not sending them for 1 million classes. And we've had cases in which the mothers told the judges that, in chambers that, oh, by the way, I want, on Saturday and Sunday, I want to put this child on this class, that class. And we've actually said, put those things, if you're so passionate about it, during your time, but not during the father's time. And judges have now started to realize that this whole tuition for every subject, the child could be 5 years old, but the child is going for every tuition, maths, English, French, Spanish, piano, violin, it's only designed for one thing, not genuinely to enrich the child, but to punish the father.
In these cases, in fact, while prepping for this interview, I was surprised at the lack of data that is out there, particularly when it comes to fathers and the things they go through. Yep. You have an avalanche of, you have just lopsided in terms of number of data for women and mothers, but not for fathers. Now, if we look at like exactly what you said, how judges are changing the way that they're approaching this, is it fair to say then that this is the reason why there are so many men committing suicide? And I'm sure among them are fathers who are going through things like this. Of course, again, there's no data. This is just my presumption. Is that the legal system, the judges, the society at large, NGOs, all of them have contributed to this fact by their sort of archaic way of always being biased towards women. And in fact, an article that was published in Astro Avani showed that in 1 year, more than close to 36% of cases of child abuse was carried out by the biological mother. So the whole angelic sort of enshrined symbol that is motherhood is also no longer what it used to be. So all of these are changing. But I'm just shocked at the lack of movement from the ground.
Yes, well, like I said, I think we need to also, in this narrative, we need to look at the source of the problem. The source of the problem are not the courts, and certainly not the judges. That's why I made it very clear.
But who then can push for legislative changes?
It is society. It is the members of parliament. It is those that sit in parliament to look at different models. But it's very difficult to look at those models when every day you've been given these narratives that men are the problem. Men are the issues. And that is why men have come to a point, and fathers have come to a point, that they feel disillusioned. And when you feel disillusioned, you don't have options. Let me just ask you something. You will have safe houses for women. Tell me how many safe houses are there for men?
In my mind, it would be none. Yes,
there is none. You walk to a clinic, you will see brochures for mothers, for wives. But tell me, how many brochures do you see for men?
Yeah,
none. So the issue is not that the courts are not doing anything. The courts are tied with, they make decisions based on legislation. They can't make decisions outside the purview or ambit of the legislation, or their decision will be challenged. So I think the main players in this are the members of parliament, the politicians, and the NGOs. We need to stop this narrative that men are bad. If I say that, am I being anti-feminist? No. I think...
No, you're just saying what's right.
I think, honestly, I'm the most purest form of a feminist proponent. I believe women should be given equal rights.
Definitely, we all believe that, yeah. Let's move on to another, I think, of course, it's also related. You mentioned about how there are no support structures for men. I talked to you earlier about a phrase, silent crisis. Now, I believe the key word here is silent. And one of the things that perhaps feminism has done very well that men have not done at all, as I mentioned earlier, is that they have brought issues of women to the forefront. Whether those issues we agree with or not, that's a different topic. But they have brought issues to the front and they are loud about it. So, are men guilty of bottling our emotions up? Are we guilty of being the sort of not talking to one another? Are we guilty of being the irresponsible bystander who doesn't really support our fellow man? Should we take the blame?
I think to some extent, yes, because that's how the DNA had been created.
Yeah.
Men are
evolution.
protectors.
Yeah.
For the longest time, we've had this imprint in our brains that men shouldn't cry. If you cry, it's a sign of weakness. But science have shown that it's okay to cry. It's okay to be a human being. And human beings have weaknesses. But today, modern men are beginning to realize, I need help. And that's why you see men these days seeing professionals, psychologists, psychiatrists, but that push is still slow because there's still this notion that, you know what, if I go to court and I say that I'm seeing a psychiatrist, my ex-wife is going to say that I'm mad.
And then I'll lose my children
I lose
indefinitely.
custody.
Yeah.
It all boils down to, if I get such help, I may lose custody. But I always tell fathers this: if you are having an issue, emotional, mental, and all of that, the most amazing sign that you are such a responsible father is getting that help. And no judges are going to say, you've gotten help for your mental issues, and therefore you're a bad father. They're not. In fact, they're going to say to the contrary, you are an amazing father because you are taking steps to improve yourself, all right? Now, but we see this. We see that fathers are generally individuals that bottle up emotions. They go to work, they have a horrible time, it's pressure, they've been bypassed, it's wage, there's a lot of burdens. There's installments, there's car loans, there's credit card bills. And who do they go and speak? They don't.
They don't, yeah.
So they bottle this up. And it's not an issue that they get angry with their bosses for whatever reason. They come back home and they beat their wives. I think that's a wrong narrative. That is based on a 1930s theory which has been debunked, all right? The frustration aggression model. Men go to work, they get upset, they come back home and take out their frustration on their wives. That is wrong.
Yeah.
All right. People abuse because of other issues. Substance, they have personality issues, emotional issues, and so on and so forth. Not because of that, because if that's the case, most men will go back and beat up their wives.
Oh, yeah,
all right?
almost all.
Majority of the...
It'll be like a WWF match at home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a wrong narrative. And those are the kind of narratives that must stop. And once you stop giving those sort of narratives that men are inherently bad, you will see that men are now coming out to speak up. They are coming out to get help. They are coming out. In fact, in 2019, the statistics showed that there was 4,440 cases of male suicide. And then that's a lot of...
A lot, yeah.
A lot of numbers.
Even one is one too many, yeah.
We see cases of why do men bottle up? Because the avenues for them to go out, if they are victims of physical abuse, who do they go? They go to a police station, they are worried that they'll be laughed at. They go tell their friend, listen, I've been beaten up by my wife, who is half my size. They get laughed at. So what do? They bottle that up.
But I think another point to consider is that if I'm a man, say for me, for example,
Sure.
I'm 6'9", about 120 plus kg.
That's very tall.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if I was dating a girl who is, say, 5 foot plus, right? And if she was hitting me and I in self-defense pushed her or whatever and there's a mark, the optics is going to say that I'm so I think a lot of men then in that situations also hold back and just become the punching bag and let the anger simmer down, which is again a horrible situation.
Because the optics out there is simply this: if there's an allegation of abuse and you are just defending yourself, and in doing so you leave a mark or a bruise on your spouse, no one's going to believe that a 4'5" spouse had beaten up a 6'9" very big size person. You'll be behind bars. But that is why, because of what you just said, this is stopping fathers, stopping men from lodging report, because it's like, who's going to believe me? And some women know that.
Yes.
And I will tell you this, we've had cases in which there were recordings where the wife is saying, go and lodge a report. You think the police are going to believe you? Go and lodge. And guess what? We've seen that in Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. All right? And that's the classic example. as to how someone has been diabolical. And we see that, and that's not a Hollywood show. We've seen that in cases in which we have recordings. And when fathers call and say, you know what, I'm in this abusive relationship, what the hell do I do? And one of the things we do is, you know what, you need to arm yourself with evidence. You need to start recording. You need to get yourself recording devices, not to infringe on privacy, but to defend yourself. Because when you go to the police station and they say, listen, you are here because there's a report lodged that you hit your wife, at the very least, you can show some recording, listen, this is what happened. And we tell them that, arm yourself, get evidence. And we've heard recordings of wives egging their husbands on. Go on, hit me. Why are you scared? Aren't you men? And it's all done simply for a reason. One bruise, you go to a police station, you get an interim protection order, father's removed from the house, father's removed from the children. The father may not have touched the child.
That's not fair, man.
I'll tell you this. We did a case recently where the mother did exactly that. She obtained an interim protection order, said that the father had molested the daughter, hit the wife. And the father came to us and said, you know what, I didn't do anything. He came to us at the 11th hour, and the court had given him 4 hours. In a month, he only has 8 hours supervised access. And even then, he doesn't get to bond with the child. He sits in a restaurant with the mother holding a handphone. All right? The father's embarrassed. All right? Now, we went to court, and we reversed that decision. We went to the Court of Appeal and reversed that decision, and we ended up getting him overnight access for a young girl. For the longest time, he had the most amazing relationship. He would send us pictures and videos of him having amazing time with his daughter. And one day he just called and said, in the middle of the night, and said, sir, I'm in police station. What happened? And my wife apparently lodged a report that I molested my daughter, and he was crying. He was in tears, and we rushed to the police station and got my lawyers to rush there, and weird hours in the morning. He was uncontrollable. He was at the police station, and he was talking to us. He was down on his knees and said, I do not know who is going to believe me. I didn't touch my daughter. She's my only child. And I looked at him and I realized this, that I believe you. I believe you, and I know that you didn't do that. All right? And I did it for free. And I told him, I'm not going to collect a single legal fees from you. I'm going to do this for you for free. An interim protection order was obtained. He was alienated from his daughter for 244 days. For 244 days, he didn't see his daughter.
My goodness.
Almost a year, based on a trumped-up false allegation.
What did the daughter say? I'm sure she would have been interviewed.
You're a child. You're staying with an individual. And there is a high likelihood you're going to listen to what that parent says. It's easy to condition a child who is now stuck. There could be issues of fear. There could be issues of threats and all of that. And I think that's wrong. But irrespective of that, we managed to set aside an interim protection order. The welfare department came in. They saw no abuse. Children have an amazing trait which we tend to discount. They are the most honest people. No amount of conditioning sometimes can get a child of tender years to lie, all right? Because the truth will come out. If it doesn't come out through the child's mouth, it comes out through actions and all that. But long story short, we went back to the High Court. We filed for contempt. And I'll tell you this. While the mother said, I'm not going to return the child, what my client actually came up to me and tapped me on the shoulder and said, I don't want my wife to go to jail. I don't want her to be even fined. I just want the judge to just tell her, please let me have access to my child. That's it. And I told that to court. This is the person who's not seen the child for 200 word days. And he just told me, instructed me to tell this court that I don't want her to go to jail. I don't want her to be fined. I just want her to give me access to my child. Finally, he's got access. And one of the things was whether the child will be able to bond with the father. And of course, everyone was concerned. And I actually said this, all it takes is 10 minutes. Trust me, the child will be playing with the father. And that's what happened. And I told him, get in the car, put your recording. I want everything in case something crops up. 10 minutes on, he sends me a video. He said, sir, this is a video of me and my daughter. She is hugging him, playing, and they have an amazing life now. Right? But imagine what
you had to go through. Yeah.
This is a classic example of weaponizing the system. And this is commonly done. That is why fathers are concerned. The moment they have a daughter, the concern is now different. Would she come and lodge a report to say that I abuse my daughter? And that is why fathers nowadays, and I tell them, you may want to put CCTV all over your house, simply because it saves you. And a lot of fathers do that, and they are just fearful of how it could be weaponized.
No, it's interesting you bring up that word weaponized, and I'm trying to think while you're talking here, what's the source and what happened? Because when you're saying to arm yourself with cameras, CCTVs, and all that, doesn't sound like that a hallmark view of what a home should be, right?
Yes.
I think CCTVs and a sort of security spy cameras are the last thing we would think.
Yep.
But is this all being sort of condoned or being encouraged by woke culture and the way we are today? Because in today's world, which I found this shocking, a man can lose everything when a woman comes and says that you raped me 30 years ago.
Yes.
Right? I like, there's one comedian, Eddie Griffin, who said that that's like me walking up to you and say, you robbed my house in 1985. And I know it's you, right? I mean, isn't all of this contributing to this and allowing women to weaponize this system without any consequence?
Well, I think we need to look at that and tread very carefully on that, because there are victims out there who may have been victims of rape, of abuse, and they would have gone through this trauma. It may have taken them 5 years, 10 years, 15 years to finally speak up. Now, there are genuine cases, and I believe so, and I believe anyone who decides to speak up and say, you know what, 30 years ago you raped me, I think they are the bravest people out there.
No, but that's fair. But what I'm saying is the problem with that system is it's a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways, because you have cases, for example, where you can go online on YouTube, and many of this, especially American celebrities, have said that when they go for a performance in a certain town, just say their PA is a woman, or the organizer attaches it, and then later on, after they leave, they say, "Oh, I was raped," and then CCTV cameras show that wasn't the case at all. This happens. So what I'm saying is not that it's wrong for a woman to say that, but I'm saying that this opens up a can of worms in terms of abuse, which is what we're seeing now. It's exactly what you said.
Well, we have got to trust the system. We have got to trust and put our faith on the judges, because you can accuse. No one can stop you from making accusations. No one can stop a party from lodging false reports. But this is where the courts step in, because the courts are going to look at evidence. The courts are going to look at what's before the court. We can't say, well, the person raped me, but the person got off because of procedural issues. Well, those procedures are all in place to weed out false allegations.
You're talking about the court system.
Sure.
I'm also including the court of public opinion.
Sure.
And that has no judge.
Yes.
And that has no jury. So what happens is that when somebody comes up with allegations like this father, to say that a father molested a child is huge.
Yep.
because it kills that person's legacy image like that. We've seen, I've seen some even actors who get accused and immediately their whole careers are gone.
Yep.
I mean, so that's what I mean. It's dangerous because it kills a person not just from in terms of risk of being imprisoned or what, but their own image in society, which is so important for us.
Well, it happens. This particular father was having a good job because of all of this, because he was out on social media and so on and so forth. He lost his job. He ended up driving Grab, and then there was a press conference, and his face was revealed, and people recognized him and threatened him. He stopped driving Grab.
This case you just mentioned.
Father,
My goodness.
he came to a point where he couldn't even have money to eat, and we bought him groceries. In fact, my legal assistant was buying him groceries from his own salary. All right. It's not that we help every father buy everyone groceries, but this was a case where we decided to do it entirely pro bono because we were passionate on the fact that this particular father was innocent. It took up a lot of our time. It was a substantial time. We were running to court from every court, from the High Court to the Court of Appeal to the Criminal Court, and research and all that. It took a lot of time, but at the end of the day, it happens. It happens not just to this father, it's just an example, but it happens most of the time. It happens a lot because that's the most easiest way for you to alienate a child. You lodge a report. By the time that matter comes up to see whether that particular interim protection order stands or not, or falls, you're able to alienate the child.
Definitely, yeah.
And in that interim period, I don't blame judges when the wife files in a custody application and say, by the way, I've got this interim protection order because there's allegation of rape. I don't blame judges if they say, okay, well, there's that allegation in the criminal court. I got to be careful. What if it was true? I can't let the father be with the child. I've got to look at the child as the primary concern here. And in that basis, I'm not blaming the judges. They are protecting the child. But what happens is damage is done. Alienation sets in. When the child sees the father, in some cases, the child don't want to talk to the father. And I've seen a case that we did some time ago where the mother did exactly that. The father was at work and the mother delivered the interim protection order, and in a matter of 5 minutes, he is homeless. And in that period in which the father was going to see what his rights are, to apply to set aside the order and all of that, the children had been alienated. All right? And this is not a one-off case. We see this rather quite common. It's in the same case we could see that the mother had gone to a government hospital and said, I'm emotionally abused. With my husband emotionally abused me for years. I need help. And they wrote, at the triage, they wrote this letter. Patient came and said that she is emotionally abused. There's no signs of emotional abuse. There are signs of physical abuse, but you cannot find signs of emotional abuse unless you go through the whole process of seeing a professional. And that takes time. And based on that letter, she then went on to obtain an interim protection order. And trust me, this father was the most closest, he was so close to the children. And the children would send him postcards or cards. When he goes to work, there'll be a card hidden, in the father's bag, to my hero. I love you, Daddy. And in 2 minutes, he's homeless. He couldn't see his children. And recently, when we did the case, the trial judge found that the mother had actively alienated the children.
How did you find that?
Evidence showed. We managed to show evidence. And for us, that was an amazing, resounding success because we managed to get a decision that the mother had actively alienated the father from the children. Now, his relationship with the children had deteriorated because of that alienation. And he sees the children outside, and for the longest time, they will not talk to him. I'm telling you this, his depression sets in. Depression, I don't like to use the word depression, all right, because you must be medically diagnosed. He's emotionally traumatized. And he actually called me crying and saying, you know what, every week I go and see my kids. They just sit there and they refuse to talk to me. All I asked was, can I see you smile? I buy food, they refuse to take my food. They just sit there because court said you need to see your dad. They just sit there, they refuse to talk. And he actually called me one day and was crying and said, you know what, I can't work. I've taken off. I don't know how long this can happen, but I just want to give up. Maybe it'll save the children. Maybe they don't have to go through this trauma of seeing me. Maybe I'll just give up. And I actually told him this. I think you do not know what's going in your kid's mind. Maybe deep down they want you to come. They want to see you. They want to see you, but they're not allowed to show love to you because the mother is sitting there. Today, 2 years on, his kids are talking to him. And the first time he saw his kids smile and laugh at his joke, he burst out crying. And his kids asked, why are you crying? And he said, you know what? After so many years, I've seen you laugh. These are the effects of weaponizing the court system, weaponizing the provisions that are there. But I want to say this and make it very clear that we must trust the judicial process.
But not when men are suffering like this. This
Yes.
is blatant biasness. And it's not, come on, you, like what you said, 5 minutes a guy's home is gone. The same would never happen to a woman.
It won't. We don't see that. But what do? Do we then go down the route of saying, I don't trust the court?
No, I'm not saying I don't trust the court. Of course, I believe that we need to live in a world where there's rule of law. Yes. But the rule of law must move in tandem with the changes in society. When we see, the facts are out there. You don't have to be a genius to find the facts. It's all there. When you see fathers suffering from depression, as you say, fathers losing their jobs, being painted as criminals in the public viewpoint, opinion. It's because and we are moving to this timeline whereby a woman can weaponize, as you say, these things and make a man look bad and take away his children, brainwash the kids. And you've said that the courts have found this happening. So there is a precedent here.
Yep.
It's not fair.
It's not fair. So what do we do?
I think, let's end it on that. But let's say this. In your opinion, what should be done now to solve this?
I think, looking at it positively, the Ministry of Women are looking at how to celebrate fatherhood, which is a good step. I think the people in Parliament who sit there should really look at the legislation, looking at ways to reform it, to reduce chaos, not by giving labels, not by saying, well, if there's a problem, well, let's go and see this group of lawyers. Let's try to mediate. It's just prolonging the chaos. It's about having a system where when you walk in, you don't feel you're losing. You walk in and you say, you know what, joint custody is a default presumption. I think it's also about advocacy. I think it's about educating what joint custody is. When you tell a mother, I'm asking for joint custody, and the first thing she looks at is joint custody, that means I lose my child. And I said, no, that's not what it means. What joint custody means is decision-making process. Care and control talks about the child lives with who, all right? The child, and we are saying the child lives with you, but let's start by joint custody, meaning the father is also seen as and is allowed to make decisions on education, on health, on general well-being. And proper substantial access, half the school holidays, uninterrupted, video calls, phone calls. I've always said this when fathers say, what about video calls? And I'll say, you know what? My experience, you can have the video call. It's so nice on the court order. Every 2 days, 15 minutes video call. But I'll tell you what the reality is. The video will be switched on, the phone will be switched on. The child will be asked to mute the call, or the video or the camera will be facing the ceiling. And all the father does for the 15 minutes is, son, can you speak? Can you please put on, just say the wife's name is Jennifer. Jennifer, can you please switch on? I can't hear. That's all happens for 15 minutes.
Really? This one happens?
Yep. And we have, and whatever I say today, I'm saying to you, it's not without any substance.
It's based on experience.
It's based on evidence. And we've shown this to the court. 15 minutes of video call is this. Mute or during the video call, that's the time the child is given something to draw. The child is given, strangely, a new toy. All designed to not communicate with the father. All right? And the father gets frustrated. The father is trying to have a conversation. All right? And most of the time, what do I say? I tell fathers this. Just get physical access. This video call and all of that, it sounds good. But you end up becoming frustrated. You end up becoming angry. You end up becoming sad. You end up becoming emotionally torn because you're seeing your child and you're not able to communicate. And I think the system must be such, it must be restructured, it must be reformed to, like in Singapore, for example, where the legislative process there, the legislation there also empowers the court to send all parties, the husband, the wife, the children, if it requires, for counseling. And this counseling is not to say you are wrong or you are wrong. No. Counseling here is post-divorce. How do you lead your life? How do you co-parent?
Yeah, exactly. That's important.
And in the US, it's the same thing. In fact, in certain states in the US, they even have co-parenting apps, which means every message that you send to your spouse, it's on that chat. It can't be deleted. Every activity in school, your access, everything's on that app. You can't delete. So if you want to go back to court for whatever variation, all you need to do is just download that entire app, and the judge can then see who's being reasonable, who's not being reasonable. All right? It's very difficult. I think fathers want to co-parent. We tell them, one of those things before you hit for co-parenting is to ensure this. Irrespective of whether the court had made a decision or not, you need to pay for maintenance. Because that is not a gender issue. That's not for you to say, well, equality. It's your obligation. I always say this. Being a father, and I'm saying for myself, being a father is not just a privilege, it's not just a gift, it's not just a title. It's a blessing. And you must realize, and tell this to fathers, you must realize at the end of the day, when you don't want to pay maintenance because you're angry with your spouse, because your spouse is not allowing you to see the child, the person that suffers is the child.
Yeah, the child suffers. And this is one thing about these parents nowadays, because there are so much of studies out there that show that children suffer the most in a divorce.
And that is true. And I tell fathers this. When you pay and you ask the mother, can I please see my kids? Can I please see my daughter? Can I please, what you're paying? And I tell them this, please don't send 200 ringgit. Because take a walk down a supermarket, look at what the prices are. If your daughter drinks milk, look at the brand and you will know how many boxes your daughter drinks. If your daughter wears diapers, you will know how many. If you don't know, go and see a pediatrician and say, listen, I don't know anything, but roughly how many diapers do a kid of this age wear? They'll be glad to tell you. Now, once you come up with that calculation, all right, you will know what it costs to feed a child. A lot of fathers say, yes, when I send $2,000 or $1,000 to my ex-wife, how am I certain that that $1,000 is going to my child and it's not being used by my ex-wife? That's between her and God. That's between you and God.
Yeah.
What you have done is you've done your part. And your part is, I've paid. I'll tell you this, and this is often seen in all courts. When you go to court and you tell, judge, my client has been alienated from his daughter. It's been 6 months. Because 6 months, okay. The next question the judge would ask is, in that 6 months period, has he been paying anything for the child? When you say no, it gives the wrong optics. But I'll tell you this, based on experience, when the moment you say yes, he's been paying this, this is the basis he's been paying this amount, 800 ringgit or 1,000 ringgit. Immediately the judge turns to the wife's solicitors and says, what's the problem? Why aren't you giving? Stop with this nonsense about this allegations and all that, And the judge realizes one thing, that you are a responsible father. And the moment once you fix that optics, that you are responsible, everything falls into place. Because the judge knows that you're looking at access, you're being reasonable. You are asking for the most basic things. I want time to be with my child. I'm paying for education. I said, pay for education. That's your child. You want your child to receive the best education. Pay. You should be proud.
But in these cases, when you're talking about a change in the attitudes of judges, is there a change in attitude towards, say, for example, granting sole custody to the fathers? For example, in that case that you mentioned of the mother who was caught having an affair with a woman on the couch, and then her children were jumping around her, that shows a person who just isn't capable of taking care of children. So when judges see examples like this...
Well, judges see examples like that, in those kind of situations, good luck to the mother to say that I'm a fit mother, because I think judges can make up their mind, all right?
So there is a chance of men getting sole custody in exceptional cases like this?
The chances of father getting sole custody, the numbers are very low. And I don't think we should start celebrating and saying, their father's getting sole custody. There are fathers that have gotten joint custody. We've got fathers joint custody too. But I don't think it's come to a point where we need to now start celebrating. Say, things are good now. We are in the utopian world now. Fathers are getting equal. No, that is in very rare cases. And in a lot of cases that we do, it's about how we arrive at that. Some of the cases, to be very fair, the solicitors acting for the wife is equally reasonable. And when you have a reasonable opponent, you can do wonders. And we've been blessed to have those kind of opponents who came and said, end of the day, I don't think there should be this whole thing of mother having this and that. Let's talk about a child. I'm concerned about a child. All right? And we've had that. What happens is when you resolve things, you end up getting lesser legal fees. Because divorce and custody can create chaos, and chaos makes money.
Yeah.
All right? And that's why you see fathers, and one of the things is fathers say, if I go to court, the legal fees will kill me. I'll then have to lose my house, I'll lose this, and the financial impact is damaging. All right?
And they're fighting a losing battle anyway.
You walk into court losing a battle. You're just looking for scraps. But to answer your question, the judges have never been pro-women. The judges have never been pro-men. They've not been biased. But it is the present legislation in place which needs to be tweaked. And when we talk about equality, then that is one legislation that screams the opposite, because it just does that. How can you say, if you are crying for equality, that a child below 7 should be with a mother? We're not talking about care and control. We're talking about joint custody, decision-making processes. So let's be honest. Let us be honest with ourselves. Do we want to solve the problems? If we want to solve the problems, it is then looking at things with neutral lenses, not saying that attributing blame to a particular gender based on the fact that gender is just that. We can't blame all our problems on patriarchal society. And when we talk about patriarchal society, how is it a patriarchal society? Patriarchal society means men must be going to court and getting sole custody.
Exactly, yeah.
If it's a patriarchal society, men shouldn't be, in 2019, 4,440 men shouldn't have committed suicide. The unemployment rate is higher for men. So how is a patriarchal society benefiting men? And I think we need to stop this narrative. We need to advocate, and I think we need to advocate not just the present generation, we need to advocate the younger generation. Because we start creating a narrative that men are bad, it then is imprinted in their mind. Men are bad. And that's why men will never, ever, if that narrative continues, seek help. We should encourage fathers to get their help, and that creates a better society.
Okay. Thank you so much, Malcolm, for coming
Thank
on.
you.
I think I've prepared so many questions, but I think we have more to discuss. So I'll definitely love to have you back on. I think there's another part I did not discuss with you in terms of younger men and their mental health and all that. Let's have a discussion about that later on. But guys, that was Malcolm Fernandez again, sharing a very, it was as a father myself, while you're sharing this, I'm just thinking of my kids and all that. It's a tough thing. I think I can't imagine what the fathers out there go through, man. It's crazy.
It's an amazing journey being a father, and I always tell fathers this: enjoy the journey before your child grows up and leaves the nest.
Oh yeah.
Enjoy the journey. I think it's amazing. I think you are an amazing father. And just to clear the air, I'm not anti-feminist.
You've said that 3 times now,
Yes,
Malcolm. We
yes.
get it. You're not. So, guys, Malcolm is not anti-feminist, right? He's just here to give men a fighting chance. So that was Malcolm Fernandez. As I said, he's an advocate and solicitor, the managing partner of Malcolm Fernandez Advocates and Solicitors, and the co-founders of Fathers Rights Association of Malaysia, FRAM. To all fathers out there who are listening to this, who may be going through certain tough times, we'll be sharing links to his association and his social media pages, so you guys can get in touch with him and get the help that you need, and stand a fighting chance and make improve your chances in court. And I think it's very sad to hear some of the stories. I'm sure you guys also agree with how just things can turn upside down in a matter of minutes for fathers. I think that's hugely unfair, and we hope the changes happen from the policymakers to our law to be more accommodating to men and support. When we see such high suicide rates and all that, something needs to be done. So well done to you, Malcolm, and all the amazing work you're doing. I would love to be a part of it and support you in any way that I can. To all of you all, please share your comments. As always, share what you think in the comment section, and let's keep this conversation going. We have many interviews coming your way, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.